Welcome back, everyone. We're taking a deep dive today into a book that's really captured my attention, Mastering Fear by Brandon Webb.
It's a fascinating read, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Webb's background is as a Navy SEAL, but he goes way beyond that in this book, talking about entrepreneurship, facing death, handling everyday anxieties.
He even gets into how fear can actually point us towards what's truly important in our lives.
Right, and that's a big part of what intrigued me about mastering fear. It's not about pretending we don't get scared. It's about understanding how to use that fear.
Absolutely. And Webb weaves together some incredible stories from his own life to illustrate his points.
Well, let's jump right into one of those stories. Imagine this. You're in Afghanistan in a ravine, facing a bunch of armed rebels, and you are completely outnumbered.
That's the exact situation Webb and his comrades found themselves in.
So what do? Run. Surrender.
Nope. They chose audacity, confronting the rebels with their own weapons displayed. They projected an unwavering readiness to engage if necessary.
A pretty high-stakes bluff, you could say.
Indeed, a calculated risk that ultimately paid off. The Afghan fighters backed down. Webb attributes their survival to their controlled fear. They recognized the gravity of the situation but responded decisively.
Okay, so they use their fear to think clearly in a life or death situation. But how does this fear as fuel concept apply to everyday life?
Think about it this way. We all have metaphorical rebels we contend with. Those looming deadlines, the confrontations we'd rather avoid, that big presentation we're dreading.
Oh yeah, I know those rebels well.
The key is to recognize that fear is there, not try to ignore it, but use it to sharpen our focus and propel us forward, rather than succumbing to paralysis.
Right, and that reminds me of another key idea from the book, the mental switch. Webb talks about changing the internal dialogue from "I'm doomed" to "I've got this." Is this just another version of positive thinking?
It's much deeper than that, I'd say. This mental switch is a skill honed by SEAL snipers, CEOs, basically anyone who has to perform under pressure. It's about acknowledging the fear, but then consciously choosing a different narrative.
I love that. Choose a different narrative. And that makes me think of one of the most striking images for mastering fear, the SEAL drown-proofing exercise. You've got your hands and feet bound, you're repeatedly submerged in a pool.
Not exactly a relaxing day at the beach.
Not at all. So how in the world do they not completely panic?
It's a brilliant metaphor, actually. Webb argues that we drown in all sorts of ways in life, not just literally. Debt, inexperience, even toxic relationships can feel like we're going under.
So it's like we're struggling against a current we can't overcome.
Precisely. The key is recognizing that mental narrative that's pulling us under. Instead of thrashing around, we need to find a way to resurface, get that mental foothold, that breath of air.
Okay, I like that. Find a foothold. And that reminds me of another analogy Webb uses. He compares fear to those yellow arrows you see along the Camino de Santiago.
The pilgrimage route.
Exactly. We see those arrows and think danger, but they're actually guiding us forward.
Such a powerful insight, isn't it? Fear, like those arrows, can direct us towards growth and opportunity. It's about recognizing that what we perceive as a threat might actually be a signpost leading us to something we truly value.
It's about perspective, right? Seeing things from a different angle.
That's a big part of it, yeah. And sometimes it takes a specific example, a personal story, to really see how this all works in practice.
And mastering fear is full of those personal stories. Like the story of Kamal Ravikant. Here's a guy, successful entrepreneur, well-traveled, but he couldn't swim.
I know, it seems almost incongruous with all his other accomplishments.
You'd think he would have tackled that fear by then, right?
Right, but it persisted. And Webb uses a 5-step process to help Kamal overcome it, a process we can all learn from.
Okay, let's break down those 5 steps. The first one is decision.
And it starts with making a resolute commitment to action, not a hesitant maybe or a someday.
So a firm "I'm doing this" kind of decision.
Exactly, no waffling allowed.
I like it. All right, so after decision, we've got rehearsal. What does that look like in this context?
Think of it as starting small, progressively building confidence. For Kamal, it meant getting comfortable in the pool, breathing, kicking, slowly expanding his comfort zone.
So kind of like easing into it, not diving right into the deep end.
Exactly. And then comes, perhaps in the most intriguing step, letting go.
Letting go. In what sense?
It's more than just physically releasing the edge of the pool. It's about releasing the grip of past failures, those limiting beliefs, even the illusion of safety that can keep us stuck.
Wow, that's deep. Okay, and then after letting go,
We've got Jumping off?
The moment of truth, huh?
It is. It's taking all that preparation and applying it to the actual fear. For Kamal, it was swimming that first full lap in the pool.
Okay, so facing the fear head on, and then the final step.
Knowing what matters.
So it's not just about conquering the fear for the sake of conquering it.
Right. It's about understanding the why. What's the driving force behind facing this fear? For Kamal, it wasn't just about swimming. It was about confronting a lifelong fear that was holding him back.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's about recognizing that there's something bigger at play. It's not just about the fear itself, but what overcoming that fear allows us to do, to be.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about something else Webb discusses, fear around making major decisions. He talks about his own experience with his company, Win Zero, which ultimately failed.
It's a really candid account of how his ego got in the way.
So how does ego play into fear in this context?
Well, Webb admits that he got swept up in the excitement of the project. He didn't listen to his intuition.
So the fear of missing out.
Could be, or perhaps the fear of appearing hesitant or not being seen as a bold leader. He didn't really evaluate his partners or the market demand thoroughly enough.
So are there any safeguards we can put in place to avoid falling into a similar trap?
Webb emphasizes the importance of self-care, making sure you're not running on fumes when making big decisions.
And what about surrounding yourself with people who will give you honest feedback?
Absolutely, especially people who aren't afraid to play devil's advocate. You need that outside perspective to help you see those blind spots you might be missing.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in the momentum, right?
Exactly, especially when it seems like everyone else is on board.
Okay, so self-care, wise counsel, those are good takeaways. Now, another thing Webb talks about that really resonated with me is the power of rehearsal. He uses his first time on live television as an example.
Ah, yes, and how his SEAL training actually helped him manage that fear.
Yeah, so tell me more about that training. How do they prepare SEALs for public speaking?
Well, it's not about just throwing you in front of a crowd and hoping for the best. They videotape you, critique you, make you watch yourself over and over.
I can imagine that's pretty intense. But is there a risk of becoming desensitized to fear? Could that backfire in certain situations?
It's a fine line, for sure. The objective isn't to completely eliminate fear, but to cultivate a healthy relationship with it.
To understand when it's a useful signal and when it's holding us back.
Right. In some high-stakes scenarios, like combat, a degree of desensitization can be beneficial. But in everyday life, we want to retain that sensitivity to risk while developing the ability to manage it effectively.
So it's not about becoming fearless, it's about becoming fear-wise.
Exactly. And that brings to mind a rather provocative statement Webb makes in the book, "You're never safe."
That's a bit unsettling, isn't it? What do you think he means by that?
Well, he's challenging our whole perception of safety and control. Webb argues that clinging to the illusion of security actually prevents us from taking risks and pursuing what truly matters to us.
And he uses Maria Shriver as an example, right?
Yes. She walked away from her multi-million-dollar business to pursue a path that truly resonated with her.
And sometimes that's the biggest risk of all, playing it safe.
Because it might mean staying stuck in a career that's not fulfilling or missing out on opportunities because we're too afraid to step outside our comfort zone.
So in a way, playing it safe can be the riskiest move of all.
Sometimes, yeah. And that leads to another important point, the importance of articulating what we truly desire. Remember that story you shared about offering to help that Uber driver?
Oh yeah, he seemed eager at first, but never followed through.
That story highlights the crucial difference between wishing and asking. We might have all these dreams and aspirations, but if we don't express them, if we don't put ourselves out there,
We're not giving ourselves a chance.
right, we're drastically limiting our chances of actually achieving those dreams. It's not enough to just put it out into the universe.
You have to take action, right?
You've got to actively pursue those opportunities. And that brings me back to Kamal's story. After achieving a certain level of success in the business world, he experienced a pretty devastating setback.
Yeah, and that forced him to reevaluate what success actually meant to him.
Exactly. At first, he was driven by this desire to revolutionize his industry, make a meaningful contribution. But as his company grew, that initial vision got kind of lost.
It became more about the pursuit of wealth for its own sake.
Yeah, and when that pursuit ultimately failed, he was left to confront the emptiness of that definition of success.
And that must have been a difficult, but ultimately transformative experience.
It was a painful process, but it led him to a deeper understanding of what truly mattered to him. Things like connection, self-love, living authentically. And, This idea of discovering meaning and purpose in the face of adversity, it reminded me of another incredible story from the book, the story of the Uruguayan rugby team.
Oh, the ones who survived that plane crash in the Andes.
Yes, their story is a testament to human resilience. They faced unimaginable hardship, frigid temperatures, starvation, the loss of their friends and teammates, but they kept going.
And their survival wasn't just about physical strength, was it?
It was about finding a reason to continue, even when hope seemed lost.
Nando Parado, one of the survivors, later said that he wouldn't remember the material possessions, but the love, the camaraderie, the shared struggle.
His words resonate with what Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor, wrote about finding meaning even in the midst of unimaginable suffering.
Frankl believed that while we can't always control our circumstances, we can control our attitude.
Exactly. And it's such a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, we have the ability to find that glimmer of hope, to connect with our shared humanity, to draw strength from our values.
To choose our response, even when it feels like we have no choice. And that brings me back to Webb and his own experiences with loss. He talks about losing his closest friend, Glenn Doherty, in the Benghazi attack.
Yeah, and that loss clearly had a profound impact on him, made him grapple with life's fragility and the importance of cherishing the relationships that truly matter.
It's a reminder that life is precious, and we should spend it with people we love, doing things we love.
Absolutely. And it also made him think about finding purpose beyond individual pursuits. Webb's work with veterans reflects this recognition that service to something larger than ourselves can be incredibly meaningful.
Yeah, and this sense of community, of shared purpose, it runs through so much of Webb's life. He talks about how SEALs operate as a cohesive unit, relying on each other for support and encouragement.
And he's brought that team-oriented approach into his business ventures too, emphasizing clear communication, mutual respect, a shared commitment to a bigger vision.
So he's taken those principles from the high-stakes world of special operations and applied them to the world of business.
And it shows how skills honed in one area can often transfer to others. Whether you're leading a team in combat or building a successful business, those core principles of leadership, communication, and resilience, they're essential.
And just like in that story about facing down those Afghan rebels, the ability to manage fear and make clear-headed decisions under pressure, that's invaluable no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the final anecdote in Mastering Fear, Webb's experience piloting a plane solo for the first time.
It's a powerful metaphor for taking control of your life, embracing the challenges and rewards of charting your own course.
He describes this intense feeling of agency, of being solely responsible for navigating this complex machine. It's both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
Oh, I can only imagine. Being up there all alone, responsible for everything.
But even though his instructor wasn't physically present, Webb could still hear his voice, guiding him.
Like an inner voice, reminding him of what he'd learned.
Right, urging him to trim the plane. It's a beautiful illustration of how the wisdom we receive from mentors and teachers stays with us, even long after the formal lessons have ended. We carry those voices with us as we navigate life's complexities.
It's like having an internal compass to guide us when things get turbulent.
And just like flying a plane, navigating life requires constant adjustments, vigilance, and trust in our training and instincts.
It's about embracing that responsibility, acknowledging that we're ultimately the ones in control.
And that can be both empowering and a little daunting, realizing we have the power to shape our own destinies, but also the potential to make mistakes, encounter setbacks along the way.
Yeah, for sure. But Webb doesn't shy away from those realities in the book. He talks about the pain of loss, the challenges of relationships, the fact that life is inherently uncertain.
But he also emphasizes the importance of finding those things that give our lives meaning, the connections, the passions, the causes that make the struggles worth it.
The things that make us feel truly alive.
Exactly. And he ends the book with this great quote from Theodore Roosevelt. I have never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I have envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well.
I love that quote. It really gets to the heart of what Webb's saying. Mastering fear isn't about avoiding challenges or trying to create a life that's free of discomfort.
Right. It's about embracing life in all its fullness, the highs and lows, the victories and defeats, and finding the courage to live it authentically.
To live a life that's true to ourselves, even when it's hard.
And to recognize that fear, while it's a natural part of the human experience, it doesn't have to control us or limit our potential.
Instead, it can be a catalyst for growth, a guidepost directing us towards what truly matters.
A reminder that we're alive, that we're capable of incredible things.
So before we wrap up our deep dive into mastering fear, let's recap some of the key takeaways.
Sounds good. Let's distill those nuggets of wisdom.
All right, here are 10 key points to remember. Number one, fear is not the enemy. It's a natural response that can actually help us achieve great things.
Number 2, control your inner dialogue. Shift from negativity and self-doubt to a more confident, proactive mindset.
Number three, practice doesn't make perfect, but it does create competence. So build those skills, build that confidence, and you'll be better equipped to handle fear.
Number 4, fear is often a signpost, pointing us towards growth and opportunity. So embrace the challenges that scare you.
Number five, letting go is essential. Let go of past failures, limiting beliefs, and the illusion of safety.
Number 6, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. The biggest regret is often the things we didn't attempt.
Number seven, know what truly matters in your life and let your values guide your actions and your choices.
Number 8, trust your gut instincts. They often hold more wisdom than we realize.
Number nine, surround yourself with wise counsel. Find mentors, advisors, people who will support your growth.
And finally, number 10, mastering fear is a lifelong journey. Embrace the challenge and the rewards that come with it.
So as we conclude our exploration of mastering fear, I want to leave you with a question. What is one fear you're ready to turn into an ally? What is one step you can take today to move toward a life that's in alignment with your values, your passions, your truest self? Think about that. Write it down, explore it, and see where it leads you. Remember, mastering fear is an ongoing process, but even the smallest step can set you on the path towards a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing beyond the boundaries of fear.